Hey guys, we're in Simi Valley. This is Excel Group North America headquarters. We're checking out the entry point in the Haibike Trekking series. This is the 4.0. It's the most affordable, 2,500 bucks. Not bad at all. You get a great drive system from Yamaha, a pretty good battery. It's roughly 400 watt hours versus 500 that we're seeing on some of the other models. Maybe a limitation on the tires a little bit. The fork, it's a coil fork versus air. It's a little bit heavier, not as adjustable, but you still get the really cool look from Haibike. You get 5 sizes. We're looking at the XL frame size, so it's a little big for me, but I was able to lower the saddle height and I'm still doing okay. They have a high step that you're seeing here, as well as what they call low step, but I call mid step, because it's, I mean, low step's like wave or something that's really deep. You're still gonna have to, you know, step up pretty high to get over that bar, or swing your leg over. That rear rack could be an issue if you have a trunk bag or maybe some panniers. I do love the pannier hangers. This is a Carrymore rack. It's rated at 25 kilograms, roughly 55 pounds. It's got the spring latch built in, integrated lights, AXA blue line in the rear, and in the front, AXA blue line. This is 30 lux for the headlight. It's turned on right. No, it's not. I actually turned it off, but you can see it from the sides as well. So I like that it's front and side views. And the tires, I was complaining about them a second ago. Michelin ProTech Cross. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it didn't really say much about puncture protection, but I can see a reflective sidewall stripe. I love that, especially for a trekking bike where you might be trying to go really far. Maybe you even have an additional battery in your bags back there, or you're using the lower levels of assist. You're taking your charger along with you to fill up along the way. This bike has a lot of great potential, but I'm wondering, you know, Haibike, there's plenty of room for bottle cage bosses right here, and when you're pedaling and you're thirsty and you're going long distance, you don't want to reach around and grab a bottle out of a trunk bag or panniers. You want the bottle like right there. And you know, SKS has like an adapter. There are lots of adapters. You could add a bottle, but then it gets bumped around more easily. Bottle cage bosses would have been really nice, and they definitely would have worked on the high step frame, maybe not the step through. You know, I've seen some other companies putting them on the top tube, or even down here on the base of the down tube, but they just skip that. What you do get is some nice SKS plastic fenders here, front and rear. I like how they're connected to the rack so that they don't rattle nearly as much. Sometimes you only get like a strut here and then a couple points there. This one's connected to the rack, and that rack's fairly independent, so it's a little bit further back. There are bosses where you could add a different type of rack if you wanted to take the fender off and just customize it a little bit. I like that it has pannier hangers. It's got that little loop for a bungee strap right there. They've got a nice slap guard right here, and the derailleur, this is Shimano Deore. It doesn't have Shadow Plus, but it does have the one-way clutch. So see that gray switch right there? You can put that in the up position. There we go. And it tightens the chain a little bit, so you're not gonna get as much bounce, chain slap going on. Especially useful if you're going off-road a little bit, doing some gravel grinding, which these tires are definitely capable of. You can see that they've got a more aggressive tread pattern, slick in the middle, some knobs on the side. Again, the tires, they have the reflective sidewall stripe. I just don't know how much puncture protection they have. I'm used to seeing like Schwabe or something like a little bit nicer for a higher end bike, and that's what I'm used to seeing from Haibike. But 2,500 bucks, they gotta cut the price somehow. These are 700 by 40C, which is roughly 28 by 1.75 if you're kind of in the US and used to that standard. Got a pretty good PSI range, so you could adjust that for comfort or just utilize that suspension in the front, right? So it's got this speed lock slider here that's really a compression adjuster, and then at the far end it locks out the fork. Again, coil, so there's a spring in there. It's not gonna lose air over time, but you're also not gonna be able to sag it for your weight. Just adjust the compression. And then under this little cover here, see where it says SR Suntour? Yeah, I didn't know this until recently, but you can take this cap off, and that's preload adjust right there. So if you're a heavier rider, you can preload the spring so that you're still getting decent travel. 63 millimeters is the maximum here. But you're not just like diving every time you brake, and you're not getting the bob and stuff. So that's kind of cool. There is some adjustment here. There's no rebound adjust or anything at the bottom, just those two up top. Also, you see where the light's mounted right there? It's on the arch of the suspension. So every time that suspension activates, it goes up and down, that light is gonna be shaking around too, and the beam pattern's gonna be a little bit spotty, you know, a little bit chaotic. It'd be nice if that light was mounted up here on the handlebar, or maybe somewhere here, kind of on the steering column. you know, it's a minor gripe. This is fairly common setup. I just want to call it out. Notice that there's a tapered head tube, 1.125 to 1.5 inches, so you could replace that suspension fork with something nicer if you wanted to. Tapered head tubes is what you see on like mountain bikes and things. You get air forks. There's just more choices there, and it's a pretty burly setup. Lots of risers on this one, so I think it's like 15 millimeter, 3 10 millimeters, and a 5 millimeter. And the stem, it's 90 millimeter here, but I think that would change depending on, you know, what size of frame you get. So 90 millimeters. These are 175 millimeter crank arms. You could probably get 170 millimeter if you're on the smaller size frames. So, you know, there's a little bit of variability here. Also, the bar's pretty long, 720 millimeters, really wide, kind of slow, powerful, like a mountain bike. XLC locking ergonomic grips. Appreciate that. We've got hydraulic disc brakes from Tektro, 2-finger levers, adjustable reach, so you can bring them in a little bit. You don't have to kind of reach quite as far to activate those if you've got gloves on or you're someone with smaller hands. They go down to 180 millimeter rotor in the front, 160 in the rear. So more stopping power up front, and as you stop, a lot of your momentum goes forward. So that's where you want it. That's great. We've got 9.8 millimeter skewers with quick release front and rear. Quick release on the seat post, 31.6 millimeter. So you could replace that with like a thud buster or body float if you want to create that full suspension feel on this bike. But keep in mind that's going to add at least, you know, about 3 inches for the travel. So if you're already kind of limited in terms of height, or if you're going for a larger frame, just keep that in mind. It's going to change the kind of seating position a little bit. Just coming back to the frame, this is hydroformed 6061 aluminum alloy. They've got gussets here, some nice sloping designs to lower that standover height, and I have measured that and the length and everything else for this bike. I really go into the details back at the full write-up at ElectricBikeReview.com. I like that there's a chain guide here, or a chain retainer plastic thing, so it's going to keep the chain from bouncing off track and kind of derailing as you're riding. Especially nice if you're on those bumpy sections. We've got that FSA alloy bash guard is what I would call it, so it protects the teeth, and it kind of keeps your pants maybe from touching the chain as much and keeps it from bouncing off to the outside, but it's really about rock strikes and stuff. And we've got this nice replaceable plastic shield on the motor in the front, so that's something that Yamaha does well. Haibike's done this drivetrain really well. It's securely mounted to the seat tube, which I really appreciate. And again, just that rubber slap guard, it's nice. And I was coming back to this one-way clutch. Let's say you have to do some tire maintenance on the go, or you have to true the spokes or something like that. Taking off the wheel can be a little bit of a chore, but you do have quick release because this is a mid-drive. The drivetrain itself is pretty clean, and when you release that one-way clutch, it makes it a lot easier. It's just a lot looser now, so I can service this a little bit easier. So that's one of the benefits. 38 tooth chainring up front, 11 to 42 cassette in the rear. So you have 42. That's a really big one. Great for climbing. There's just a great range here. This bike feels really good. I've enjoyed riding it around, and you know, I'm not in the most like arduous conditions or anything, but I have been trying to go off some curbs, and it just feels really smooth. When you get those 700C 28-inch wheels, it lowers the attack angle. They're pretty efficient. They're decent volume of air, right? And they're good rolling momentum. It's a nice setup, and I like the black color. When you go from the 4.0 to the 6.0, you get some nicer components, but when you go up to the 7.0 and the 9.0, it switches from the Yamaha PW motor up to the Bosch CX, which is by far my favorite motor, right? Like between the two. It's a little bit louder. It might use energy quicker, because this one's rated up to 70 Newton meters of torque, whereas the Bosch CX is rated up to 75. You know, the PW motor, for me, this is just the base level. They have PW like SE now with Bluetooth compatibility and like up to 110 RPM support. This only supports pedal cadence up to 100. So you really have to shift gears in order to reach higher speeds. You can't just pedal faster, you have to shift. Okay, and the benefits of a mid-drive is that you get to shift, you get to leverage that cassette for climbing or for going faster, but this one doesn't have shift detection, whereas Bosch does. Okay, so that's gonna be easier on your drivetrain, your chain, your sprockets, the derailleur, it's probably gonna last a little bit longer with that shift detection. They also have similar sensing. This is like, you know, rear wheel speed. You can see the magnet over there. We've got pedal cadence and pedal torque. With Bosch, it's 1,000 times per second. So I flipped the bike around so you can see the motor a little bit easier now. And, you know, just getting back into some of the specs, you don't have the shift detection. You've got a motor that's about 6.6 pounds. It's not too bad, but it's going to be more of a power sipper. As long as you shift thoughtfully, you know, it can really be nice, and it's quieter too. So the range on this is pretty phenomenal, and I'm going to get into that in a minute. But one of the other compromises here while we're talking about the drive system is the charger. I mean, look at this thing. This is 2.1 pounds. It's 4 amps, so it's going to fill the battery quicker. But you know, you've already got to put your bottle somewhere maybe back here, and now you've got this big charger that's going to go in one of your bags. If you really are trying to do long distance trekking, the 36 volt 11 amp hour battery isn't quite as nice as the 36 volt. I think it's 13.6 amp hour. And you know, whether it's the Bosch Power Pack 500 or the nicer Yamaha batteries, that's one of the compromises here. It's just, it's stripped down a little bit. Also, the charging port, you can see it here on the left. It's got a nice rubber cover, but it's just this circular plastic plug, and it seems like it's in the way a little bit of that crank arm. So if you're bump the bike, you don't want to break that off or bend it, get it snagged. It's nice that the kickstand's pretty far out of the way and it's adjustable, so you can get the bike standing up straight. Always like that. Let's go ahead and take the battery off. You just insert the keys here like this. I noticed that it doesn't spring back or anything, so you kind of have to manually lock it. The cool thing is, you know, now we take the battery off. It's got a LED charge level indicator, 25% increments there with 5 or 4 bars, a handle at the top. You don't want to drop this thing. I thought it would actually be lighter because, you know, Yamaha does have a 500 watt-hour battery, so from 400 to 500 watt-hours, I thought, oh, it's going to be a little lighter. No, it weighs about the same, 6.6 pounds, which is sort of a lot, in my opinion, you know, considering there are, you know, the Bosch Power Pack, so I guess they're using lower energy density cells. Now we can go ahead and turn that key, pull it out, and then there's that metal ridge, so when I slip this back on, it's going to click into place, and there are the pins down there. I want to be careful not to bend those. There we go. Kind of line it up at the top and listen for it. There we go. It's clicked on. Pretty secure. And I like that these do slide in from the side, because if this was the low step frame, you know, that tube can be a lot lower versus Bosch. It kind of has to come, their batteries come up, they don't come out from the side. So not bad. There's the replaceable skid plate again. Get a nice angle on that. Reinforcement eyelets on the rims. I love that the rims are black, the spokes are black. These are 14 gauge, so it's good. 32 hole front and rear. We talked about the disc brakes a little bit. Presta valves. It's a pretty nice setup. And the extra reflectors. I feel like Haibike does a pretty good job on reflectors, especially with their trekking model. And I like these VP pedals. They're kind of a compromise. They've got the ridges and definitely stiffness. They're alloy. They look nice and black with this really kind of bright silver cranks. I'm surprised they did that, but maybe it ties in with some of the branding. Internally routed cables, and these are removable, so the routing holes they're bigger and it's easier to service, I think, for shops, but it's still internally routed, purpose-built electric bike. Not a whole lot of cabling going on up here at the front, and this little bell, this OI bell. Really nice sound, really pretty. We were talking about, you know, the 10-speed drivetrain before. One of the other things I appreciate is this Shimano Deore trigger shifters. Check this out. It's got the little trigger here, which can go in or out, and then a triple click on the low gear. 1, 2, 3. There we go. So it's a nice setup. It just gives you more options and kind of let your hand rest. I could imagine putting some bull horns on here or something and just setting this up. It also, the handlebar, you'll see that it's sort of a low rise, and that might protect the display a little bit more if the bike gets crashed, so it kind of sets the display down. And I think that's also why the stem's a little bit lower, but you could flip the stem to make it even more aggressive. There's just a lot of options. Celly rail saddle, pretty comfortable, and it's got that cutout, so it's some ventilation, and maybe for guys, sort of the prostate thing. 31.6 millimeter suspension post option here, so it's rigid, but if you put a suspension post, it would give you the full suspension feel, which is nice, you know, if you're going the distance. So let's go ahead and boot this thing up. But before we do, check it out. It's removable. It's even got like a little independent battery, so CR2032. You could replace that if you need to, and just kind of tells you the time. Take this with you. Maybe even put a little keychain on it or something like that. It is adjustable, kind of swivels forward and back to reduce glare. Hopefully you can see it all right where we're at. And then here's the control pad, well within reach of the left grip. And it has an integrated micro USB port in the bottom. And I believe that puts out 500 milliamps. It's 5 volts, so you could have your smartphone or maybe an additional light or something up here, and you could tap into the battery, which is awesome. I always appreciate that. One thing that this is not doing very well is the walk mode. I think they disabled that, Yamaha, for North America, which is a bummer, because it's kind of like, you know, if you get a flat tire or you're just walking with a friend or you're climbing a section it's not easy to ride, or maybe even steps or a ramp, walk mode is nice. And it just, I mean, why do they have the button if they disabled it? And it really, like, come on, in America we have higher speed limits on our bikes. There are full-on throttle bikes. So walk mode, a lot of the other companies, including Bosch, have left it enabled. I would ask Yamaha to do the same in the future. Here's the power button. We just tap it once. It boots up very quickly. You'll notice we're in miles per hour right now, and the clock isn't set correctly. If we wanted to adjust those, instead of just pressing this once to turn it on, we would hold the S button and power, and that lets us adjust the settings. It's really nice. Just figured that out today. But otherwise, you know, power it on, and you've got this power meter. We'll see that when we go for a ride test. The clock, speed, all very big, really easy to see. Down here we have a 10-bar battery infographic, and that's great because it's 10% increments, but there's also battery percentage as we dig into this in a second. So the S button is what sort of helps us navigate through the rest of the menus. Right now we're on range estimate. It says distance, dist, but it's actually range. So if I press the up arrow to the lowest level of assist, plus eco, which is 50% assist, it says 104 miles. That's pretty good. But again, you're not getting a whole lot of assistance. 50% of the effort you put in is sort of matched. You know, it doesn't feel, you don't notice it that much. It helps to offset the weight of this bike. And this is 55.5 pounds. It's a heavier bike, but keep in mind this is the extra large frame. Might be a little bit lighter if you have one of the smaller frames. Okay, so we arrow up to just standard eco, that's 100%. You get 80-mile range. Up to standard, that's 190%, 52. And then up to high, which I believe is 280% assist, and that's 43 miles. So you can see the range really drops and the motor starts to get louder. It's just spending energy more quickly, but it also feels nice, you know, really have that electric bike feel. So I'm gonna press the S. We're gonna change some of the other menus and explore a little bit. So 99% battery, that's the percentage I'm talking about. RPM, that's pedal RPM, and remember this motor supports up to 100 RPM, whereas the Bosch CX and some of the fancier Yamaha motors support up to 110, 120, which, you know, it's a little bit more satisfying if you're an active rider. You don't have to shift if you don't want to. And then let's see here, average speed, max speed, trip distance, odometer. There's our range estimate again, and then battery percentage. So we've gone in a loop. Like, that's all of it. If you wanted to reset one of these, let's see, like our average speed, I think you just hold the S button here for a couple seconds, and it clears it. So that's how it works. That's pretty much the ins and out of the display panel. I might go ahead and hop on this thing and take a little test ride. Okay, I'm gonna stow that kickstand. We're in the highest level of assist. I usually test this way so you can hear the motor. It's a little bit more pronounced. And I know that there's a hill like right up that way, so I'm starting out. It looks like I'm in one of the lower gears. Feeling very stable. Yamaha has what they call zero cadence support, so you really just like right away when you start, it kicks back power, and they use a traditionally sized chain ring, and they even support multiple chain rings up front, so you could have a wider range of gearing if you wanted. For e-bikes, I don't think it's really necessary a lot of the time because you have the motor support. You don't need as many gears. Keep the bike lighter, keep the drivetrain tougher, simpler, but it's nice to have that option. It's something that differentiates them, especially since, you know, they don't have the shift detection. So if I shift gears and I'm not thoughtful about it, it's gonna be a little like kind of louder, a little bit more banging. Might have been able to hear that. You know, that's not really great for the sprockets. Although I think this does have a steel chain ring, which is designed to be a little bit tougher up front. Okay guys, I'm in a relatively low gear here, but at the highest level of assist. So I'm gonna be spinning pretty quickly because that's what makes the motor like as loud as it can be, but it's just super quiet. Again, I think it starts quickly, but there's a little bit of a delay on the slowdown. And that's not a bad thing. I mean, the system works really great, and there isn't like the friction, the reduction gearing thing that Bosch has with their smaller chain rings on their performance motors. So it's kind of neat. I think it works pretty well. Let's just do it. I hit about 21 miles per hour there, just on flat concrete. Felt fine. The transition from assisted to unassisted was really smooth. Again, you can hear the motor when it's at higher RPM, but you're attached to the frame right now, so it's probably a little louder than it is when you're just riding around. I couldn't hear it at all when Sean was riding. I was surprised he was in the highest level of assist. Hey guys, so I got my friend Shine Weingarten here, who's gonna help demo the bike. And this is an extra large. And
I'm not so much extra large.
He's not quite extra large, but thank you so much for doing this, because I love getting these third-person shots. And I want to comment, Haibike, gosh, it's always such a tight seat tube, so like really had to push that thing down there, but we got it. Also, you know, if this was your bike, we'd probably cut the post because it's colliding down here. It won't go any lower. What's your role here? Because you talk to people, you help people all the time.
I'm the lead tech support rep.
Lead tech support rep, yeah.
I do a lot of the online documentation of how to fix stuff, take it apart, put it back together, and solve problems.
This is the guy I call when I'm like, what? How does that work? And you've helped me out a lot, so.
I try.
Thank you so much, Sean. So we're just gonna take off. I'm gonna ride around him and get some different angles. Hop on this I-zip over here and go for it. And it looks like that headlight got a little bit bumped. Can you turn on the lights, Sean? There we go. So you can see the headlight and then the side of that front light. Looking good. Very nice. It's super quiet. What level are you in?
High.
He's in high. Okay. Yeah, I'm always impressed with the Yamaha system. Just, it's one of the quieter bikes out there.
How's that tiptoeing look?
Yeah, you're doing pretty good. Like maximum leg extension. Thanks, man. You all right? Great job. Yeah, you know, and that's the thing, like, see how the frame is sloped at the top? That's really what's allowing Sean to do this, even though this frame's way too big for you. How tall are you?
5'5".
5'5", okay. I'm 5'9", and I have a 31-inch inseam, so for me, this was doable, but it was still a bit on the large side. Do you know your inseam?
I think about 28. 28?
Okay, you know, and it's fun to, you know, like there are 5 sizes, so they've got a size for everyone in this bike.
Bigger shoes to ride this one.
That's right. There we go. There's our 20 miles per hour. Feels pretty fast. So this is a class 1. It's going to be allowed on, you know, mountain bike trails and stuff, the way that a class 3 speed pedelec would not. It's also going to spend that energy more efficiently. So those are things worth thinking about if you've got the trekking mindset and you're going across the country and you're worried about where the bike would be allowed. This bike's going to be allowed kind of everywhere. It's the most legal electric bike class in the United States and really all over. Well guys, that was a whole bunch of fun. I'm excited about the 2018 lineup from Haibike. They've got kind of a blended approach here. It used to be that SDURO was all Yamaha systems and XDURO was all Bosch. And now it's more like SDURO is kind of the, just, you know, lower end, a little bit more everyday riding, whereas XDURO's a bit more aggressive. So, you know, we're looking at this, and this is the 4.0 Trekking. It's the entry level. It uses the Yamaha PW system, but certainly gets the job done. And for 2,500 bucks, you've got their 2-year warranty. Got a lot of shops that support this kind of thing, and I just feel like it's a fun bike. So I hope this helps you out. For the full written review with all those other measurements and specs, I'll see you back at ElectricBikeReview.com. Of course, have fun out there, share your thoughts in the comments, and ride safe, as always.